Lena woke up early that morning to the sound of birds chirping outside her small window. The sunlight was gentle, spilling into the tiny room she shared with her mother, Hawa. She stretched and yawned, thinking about the day ahead. Her mother was already awake, preparing breakfast in the small kitchen. The aroma of boiled yam and vegetables filled the house, a smell that Lena had grown used to, though she rarely appreciated it. Hawa hummed a soft tune as she worked. Her hands were steady and skilled, moving through the motions with years of practice. She had been a widow for many years, raising Lena alone. Every day she woke up before dawn to sell vegetables in the market, fetch water from the well, and manage their little home. Her life was hard, but she never complained. Hawa had always hoped that Lena would see her efforts and learn to value what mattered most: love, honesty, and patience. Lena, however, often thought differently. She was a lively girl, full of energy and curiosity, but she had developed a habit of comparing herself to others. She noticed the wealthier families in the village with larger houses, nicer clothes, and delicious meals. Instead of feeling grateful for what she had, Lena often felt frustrated. She would sit at the breakfast table, folding her arms and sighing, glancing at her mother. "Why do we have to live in this tiny house, Mother? Why can't we have nice clothes like Amina and her sisters?" she complained, her voice tinged with annoyance. Hawa looked up from the pot, her eyes calm and warm. "Lena, we have what we need. We may not have much, but we have enough. Life is not about having more than others, but about making the best of what we have," she said gently. She knew that words alone might not convince her daughter, but she spoke them anyway, planting seeds of wisdom in Lena's mind. Lena rolled her eyes and laughed lightly. "Mother, you're always talking about making do. I want more. Why can't we have nice things like the other girls?" Her tone was not mean, but it carried a sense of entitlement. She did not understand her mother's perspective. To her, life was about appearances, wealth, and being admired by others. She could not yet see the value of hard work, love, or patience, the qualities her mother embodied every single day. Hawa sighed quietly and continued cooking, stirring the pot with care. She had grown used to her daughter's complaints, but each time she heard them, a small ache settled in her heart. She remembered her own mother, who had taught her the same lessons about gratitude, patience, and humility. Hawa hoped that Lena would learn these lessons too, but she knew it would take time and experience. After breakfast, Lena hurried to get ready for school. She wore a slightly worn dress that Hawa had sewn herself, smoothing the fabric with her hands. Lena glanced at her reflection in the small mirror and frowned. "Mother, this dress is too plain. Everyone else wears bright, new clothes," she said, her tone critical. Hawa walked over and gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "Lena, clothes do not make a person beautiful or worthy. What matters is who you are inside. One day you will understand this," she said softly. Lena shook her head impatiently. She didn't want to hear another lecture. To her, her mother's words seemed old-fashioned and unimportant. She wanted to be noticed by her peers, to wear new dresses, and to have a life that looked impressive from the outside. She could not yet appreciate the quiet strength and love that her mother carried every day. As Lena left for school, she passed by neighbors who waved at Hawa. "Good morning, Hawa," they called. Hawa smiled and waved back. Even though she had little, she always treated everyone with kindness. Some of the neighbors whispered to each other about Lena. "Poor girl," one said. "She doesn't seem to understand how lucky she is to have a mother like Hawa." Lena overheard the whispers and scoffed. "Mother is poor," she thought. "That is all I see." At school, Lena was surrounded by classmates with new uniforms, shiny shoes, and snacks that looked delicious. She compared herself to them and felt frustrated again. She whispered to her friends, "Why can't we have nice things like them? My mother is poor and it is embarrassing." Her friends giggled, agreeing with her, though some felt a little uncomfortable. Lena didn't notice. Her mind was focused only on appearances and what she thought she deserved. Back at home, Hawa worked in the small garden behind their house. She watered the plants, tended to the vegetables, and prepared some food for the next day. Even though her life was difficult, she found peace in the work she did. Each seed planted, each vegetable harvested, was a small triumph. Hawa believed that hard work and honesty were more valuable than wealth. She looked at the small garden and smiled, thinking that one day, Lena would understand these simple truths. Later that afternoon, Lena returned from school, exhausted and frustrated. She flopped onto the small wooden bench and groaned. "Mother, today was awful. Everyone laughed at my old shoes. Why do we have to be so poor?" she complained. Hawa knelt beside her and held her hands gently. "Lena, do not let what others have make you forget who you are. You are kind, smart, and full of potential. Wealth does not define a person. Character does, she said, her voice calm and full of love. Lena sighed but didn't respond. She was too absorbed in her thoughts about what she lacked. She did not yet understand her mother's wisdom. She thought of the other girls at school, the new shoes they wore, the shiny bracelets and the colorful clothes. She wished she could have those things and did not see the value in what she already had. That evening, Hawa prepared a simple dinner of rice, beans and vegetables. Lena pushed the food around on her plate, dissatisfied. "Mother, we should have meat or something special tonight. Why do we always eat like this?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Hawa looked at her daughter and smiled gently. "Lena, we eat what we can afford and it keeps us healthy. One day you will understand that happiness does not come from food, clothes or money. It comes from love, patience and gratitude," she said softly. Lena huffed and went to her room. She lay on the small mat and stared at the ceiling. She didn't feel grateful. She only felt envy and frustration. She didn't yet see the sacrifices her mother made, the hours she spent working, or the love she poured into every task. To Lena, life was about what she didn't have, not what she already had. The next morning, Lena watched as Hawa left for the market. She carried a small basket of vegetables, walking carefully along the dusty road. Lena felt a flicker of annoyance. "Why does she have to work so much?" she muttered under her breath. "If only we were rich, she wouldn't have to do this." Hawa heard her but said nothing, continuing her walk to the market with patience and dignity. At the market, Hawa sold her vegetables with a gentle smile. Villagers approached her not only for the produce but also for her kindness and honesty. Some whispered about how patient and loving she was, even though life had given her very little. Hawa never boasted about what she did, she simply did her best each day. Meanwhile, Lena stayed at home staring out the window. She felt bored and restless. She thought about her friends at school and the clothes they wore, the snacks they ate and the things they had that she wanted. She sighed, feeling frustrated again. She didn't yet understand that the quiet, steady work of her mother was far more valuable than any fancy clothes or possessions. Days passed in a similar way. Lena complained, envied others, and mocked her mother silently or in whispers to friends. Hawa continued to work, cook, and care for her daughter, never showing anger. She understood that lessons of humility and gratitude often came slowly, through experience and reflection. She only hoped that Lena would see the truth before it was too late. One afternoon, Lena followed her mother to the market. She watched Hawa interact with customers, helping them choose the best vegetables, offering kind words and treating everyone with respect. Lena noticed that people smiled at her mother and listened carefully to her advice. She began to feel a strange emotion, a mix of admiration and confusion. For the first time, Lena realized that perhaps her mother's life, though modest, had its own value and dignity. That evening as they returned home, Lena remained quiet. Hawa noticed her daughter's unusual silence. She gave her a small smile and said, "Lena, every day we live we learn. One day you may understand that wealth is not the most important thing. Love, patience and respect matter more than anything else." Lena looked at her mother but said nothing. She didn't fully understand yet, but a tiny seed of thought had been planted in her heart. The days continued and Hawa's patience never wavered. She woke early, worked long hours and cared for Lena without complaint. She taught her daughter small lessons through words and actions, always gentle and steady. Lena, though still frustrated at times, began to notice the effort and love behind her mother's actions. Slowly, the mockery in her heart began to soften, replaced by curiosity and a small spark of understanding. Even on the hardest days when the sun was hot and the work seemed endless, Hawa never lost her patience. She carried herself with dignity, showing that life could be lived with respect, kindness and care even without wealth. Lena began to see that her mother's strength was far greater than the richness she had always envied. And though Lena did not say it aloud yet, she began to wonder if perhaps she had been too quick to mock and judge her mother. She watched Hawa cook, clean and prepare for the next day. She saw the sweat on her mother's brow, the careful way she handled every task, and the quiet love she poured into each small action. A feeling of admiration and guilt began to grow inside her. Little by little, Lena started to think differently. She began noticing the beauty in her mother's patience, the wisdom in her advice, and the strength in her quiet work. She didn't yet understand everything, but she felt that perhaps life was more than wealth, clothes, or appearances. Maybe, she thought, true happiness came from love, respect, and hard work, the very things her mother had shown every single day. Hawa continued to work, smile, and love without expecting anything in return. She knew that one day, Lena would see the value of what she had been given. And though Lena still complained at times, she began to realize that her mother's life, simple and modest as it was, had lessons that could change her forever. That night, Lena lay in bed and thought about the day. She remembered seeing her mother at the market, helping customers, and carrying herself with quiet pride. She thought about the long hours her mother worked and how much she loved her, despite Lena's complaints and mockery. A small feeling of respect and gratitude began to grow in Lena's heart, though she didn't fully understand it yet. And as Hawa finished her own chores and came to check on Lena, she smiled softly. "Sleep well, my child," she said. "One day, you will see that the things that matter most in life are not seen in clothes or money, but in love, patience, and care." Lena closed her eyes, thinking about her mother's words. Something inside her stirred, a quiet understanding that her mother's life, though simple, was full of lessons she had yet to learn. The sun set slowly, casting golden light over their small house. Inside, Hawa prepared for the next day with her usual patience and care. Lena lay in bed, thinking, feeling, and slowly beginning to understand the value of what she had always overlooked. It was the start of a long journey, a journey of learning, respect, and gratitude, a journey that would teach Lena the true meaning of love and humility. It was a bright morning in the small village when Lena was walking to the market with her mother, Hawa. The sun shone gently over the dusty roads, and birds chirped as if greeting the start of a new day. Lena was already complaining softly under her breath about having to wake up early, about the simple clothes she wore, and about the small basket of vegetables her mother was carrying. Hawa walked patiently beside her, giving little attention to the murmurs of frustration. She had grown used to her daughter's complaints over the years. As they walked past the village square, an elderly woman appeared from behind a cluster of trees. Her hair was silver, her back slightly bent from age, but her eyes were bright and filled with a quiet wisdom. Her name was Binta, and the villagers often sought her advice. Some called her wise, others whispered that she could see things others could not. Today she stopped as Lena passed, her gaze falling on the girl with an expression that was both kind and serious. "Good morning, Hawa," Binta said in her soft, measured voice. Hawa smiled and nodded respectfully. "Good morning, Binta. How are you today?" she asked. "I am well, thank you," Binta replied, her eyes briefly scanning Lena. "And you, young one? How is your heart today?" Lena tilted her head, slightly puzzled by the question. "My heart? What do you mean?" she asked, her voice carrying the slight arrogance that had become a habit over the years. Binta smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Your heart, child. The way you treat others, the words you speak, the respect you give, these all come from the heart. A heart full of pride and mockery will bring trouble, even to its owner." Lena laughed lightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I do not understand, madam. I do not mock anyone. I only speak the truth. My mother is poor and our life is simple. Everyone knows this." She giggled softly, thinking she sounded clever and wise beyond her years. Binta's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in concern. She knelt slowly to Lena's level, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Child, it is not the truth spoken kindly that brings growth, but the truth spoken with respect. When you mock, when you laugh at what is honest and good, you set the seeds of regret in your own heart. One day you will see this, and the lesson may be hard to bear." Lena pulled away slightly, rolling her eyes. "I am smarter than everyone here. I do not need advice from old women about my life. I know what I want and I know what is right for me. My mother is too simple, she does not understand the world like I do." She said this with confidence, her voice firm as if the wisdom of age could not reach her. Hawa remained silent, standing beside her daughter, her hands folded gently. She had learned over time that lessons of the heart were not always heard when spoken. They were often learned through experience. She gave Binta a small nod, acknowledging her presence and words, but she also knew that Lena would only understand in her own time. Hawa's heart was calm, though quietly aching. She loved her daughter deeply and hoped that Binta's words would stay with her, even if Lena did not respond immediately. Binta sighed softly and straightened, resting her hand on her walking stick. "Remember, Lena," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years, "pride and mockery will return to you. They are like shadows that follow your every step. Treat your mother with respect and your heart with care, and you may live a life full of peace." Lena shook her head and laughed again. "Peace? I want more than peace. I want wealth, I want status, I want to be admired. None of these things come from old sayings and advice." She spun slightly on her heel, brushing past Binta and continuing on the dusty road toward the market, ignoring the small, sad smile on the old woman's face. Hawa walked silently behind her daughter, careful not to scold her. She knew that Lena's arrogance, though frustrating, was part of her youth. The words from Binta were planted in Lena's mind, whether the girl realized it or not. And sometimes Hawa thought, life itself would be the teacher, showing Lena the consequences of her mockery and pride. At the market, Lena ran ahead, eager to meet her friends. She immediately began pointing at the small baskets her mother had brought. "Look at this, everyone. My mother has only a few vegetables. We do not have money for nice things like your families. Isn't it funny?" Her friends laughed, a mixture of amusement and discomfort. Some of them whispered quietly, unsure whether it was right to mock someone else's family, but Lena was full of confidence and excitement at drawing attention to herself. Hawa, carrying the baskets carefully, noticed the whispers and stifled giggles. She did not speak to Lena harshly, she only gave a small, knowing glance, understanding that the lesson would come in time. Her heart was heavy, but she trusted that the girl would see the importance of respect and humility eventually. Hours passed at the market. Hawa sold vegetables to villagers who trusted her and knew her honesty. She smiled and greeted customers, helped children choose the best produce, and offered guidance to anyone who asked. She worked tirelessly, her movements calm and steady, as if the day's labor brought her joy despite its simplicity. Lena, however, continued to complain quietly, tugging at her mother's hand, pointing at other stalls with larger baskets, brighter colors, and expensive goods. "Mother, why can't we have bigger baskets like those? Look at them, so much better than ours. People will laugh at us if we do not keep up," Lena whispered, her voice filled with frustration. Hawa smiled gently, kneeling to adjust the strap of Lena's small bag. "Child, we have what we need. Do not measure life by what others have. Measure it by your heart, your effort, and the care you put into what you do. One day you will understand." Lena huffed impatiently. She didn't see the wisdom in her mother's words. She was too focused on appearances and what other people thought. The notion of measuring life by effort or care seemed childish to her. To her, the world was about showing status, being admired, and having things others wanted. She could not yet see that her mother's simple life held lessons far more valuable than wealth or beauty. As the day went on, Lena continued to mock silently, though she tried to appear polite to others. She watched her mother handle customers with patience, offering kindness even when a buyer tried to haggle unfairly. The girl noticed it but dismissed it as ordinary behavior. She did not yet appreciate the strength behind such patience, the quiet dignity that her mother carried with her every day. By late afternoon, the sun began to descend, casting long shadows across the market. Lena's energy waned, and she sat under a small tree, fanning herself lazily. She glanced at her mother, who was still standing, greeting a customer with a warm smile and delivering vegetables with careful hands. Lena frowned, thinking that her mother's life was boring, repetitive, and without excitement. She still did not realize that Hawa's consistency, patience, and love were rare and powerful. Binta, the old woman who had warned Lena that morning, walked past the market. She noticed the girl sitting beneath the tree and nodded slightly to Hawa, who acknowledged her silently. Binta's eyes lingered on Lena, reading the girl's pride and impatience. She knew the lesson had not yet reached the child, but she also knew it would come in one way or another. Sometimes life had to teach lessons more sharply than words could. As the sun dipped lower, Hawa gathered the remaining vegetables and started walking home. Lena followed, still annoyed by the slow pace. "Mother, why must we carry such heavy baskets? Look at other families, why do we work so much for so little?" she complained, tugging at the handles impatiently. Hawa stopped for a moment and looked at her daughter. "Lena, it is not the amount you carry but how you carry it. Life will ask you to carry heavy things. How you do it and the care you put into it will matter more than the weight itself. One day, you will see that the real burden is in pride and mockery, not in hard work." Lena did not answer. She shook her head and continued walking, still frustrated. But deep down, though she did not understand it yet, Binta's words echoed quietly in her mind. Perhaps, she thought fleetingly, there was more to life than showing off, more to respect than appearances. But she pushed the thought aside, eager to get home, complain about the day, and dwell on what she did not have. When they finally arrived home, Hawa set the baskets down gently, wiping her hands on a cloth. Lena flopped onto the small bench, groaning. "Why can't life be easier? Why must we always work like this?" she complained, letting out a dramatic sigh. Hawa knelt beside her, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Child, life is not about ease. It is about patience, love, and learning from every experience. One day you will see the value of work, respect, and humility. And you will understand that mockery only brings regret." Lena rolled her eyes, not ready to hear more lessons. But that night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a quiet thought began to stir in her mind. Binta's warning, her mother's calm words, and the patience she had seen all day planted a small seed. Perhaps there was more to life than what Lena had believed. Perhaps pride and mockery were not as clever as she had thought. Hawa checked on her daughter one last time before sleeping, smiling softly. "Rest, Lena. One day your heart will understand what your eyes cannot yet see." Lena closed her eyes, unaware that the lesson had begun to take root. And as the night grew quiet, the gentle rhythm of their simple home echoed with the promise of understanding, patience, and the slow journey toward humility. Weeks passed after Lena's encounter with Binta and her mother's gentle warnings. At school, Lena had been careless and distracted. She spent more time worrying about appearances, what her friends thought of her, and the things she did not have than paying attention to her lessons. Her teachers often noticed her daydreaming and whispered reminders, but Lena shrugged them off. She thought she was too clever to worry about small advice, too smart to need guidance from those she considered ordinary. Then came the day she had been waiting for months, the announcement of scholarship results that would allow her to continue her studies in the city. She had imagined herself there many times, walking in streets full of bright lights, wearing the newest clothes and being admired by everyone around her. She had pictured herself in a world completely different from her small village. Her friends gathered around, whispering and giggling as the results were posted on the school bulletin board. Lena's heart raced as she pushed through the crowd, scanning for her name. When she finally found it, her chest sank. Her name was missing. She blinked and looked again, hoping her eyes had deceived her. But no, her name was nowhere on the list. Confusion turned to disbelief, and disbelief turned to shame. She felt a sudden weight pressing down on her chest, heavier than any basket of vegetables she had ever carried with her mother. The excitement she had imagined for weeks vanished instantly, replaced by embarrassment. Her friends, who had waited to celebrate their success, now looked at her with pity and awkward glances. Some whispered softly to each other, and Lena could hear fragments of their words. "She didn't make it, poor Lena, all that arrogance." Lena's face burned with shame. She had mocked her mother, criticized their small house, and dreamed only of wealth and admiration. Now she was faced with a harsh reality: she could not go to the city to study. The scholarship she had relied on, thinking it was guaranteed, was gone. Her arrogance, her carelessness, and her lack of preparation had cost her dearly. That evening, Lena returned home quietly, her head bowed. Hawa noticed the change immediately. Her daughter, who usually entered the house with chatter and complaints, walked in silently. The baskets she had carried were empty. Her usual energy was replaced by a heavy air of regret. Hawa did not scold her. She only watched with quiet concern, waiting for Lena to speak. Lena sank onto the small wooden bench in the corner of their home. Her eyes filled with tears, though she tried to hold them back. "Mother, I didn't get the scholarship," she stammered, her voice trembling. I can't go to the city. I don't know what to do." She buried her face in her hands, feeling the weight of her own mistakes. Hawa walked over slowly and placed a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Lena," she said softly, "I am sorry this happened. But this is life. Sometimes we make mistakes, and the consequences teach us lessons we cannot learn any other way. You will find a way forward, even if it is different from what you expected." Lena looked up at her mother, her eyes wide with shame. "Mother, I was careless. I didn't work hard. I thought everything would just happen because I wanted it to. I feel so small and foolish." Her voice broke and tears ran down her cheeks. Hawa pulled her into a gentle hug. "My child," Hawa whispered, "this does not make you small. It makes you human. Life will teach you, but it also gives you chances to grow. You may not see it now, but you have the strength to overcome this. We will face it together." Lena leaned against her mother, feeling warmth and comfort she had rarely appreciated before. The shame and embarrassment she felt were sharp, but they also opened her eyes. For the first time she realized that her mother's life, though simple and modest, had been full of lessons about patience, hard work, and resilience. Hawa had never mocked her. She had never abandoned her. She had always provided guidance and love, even when Lena had been careless and prideful. The next morning, Lena awoke with a heavy heart but a new sense of determination. She watched her mother prepare breakfast, noticing for the first time the care with which she worked. Hawa cooked quickly but carefully, arranging the food so that everything was neat and clean. Lena realized that her mother had been preparing her for life all along, teaching her the value of patience and diligence without words of complaint or reproach. I want to help, Lena said quietly as she joined her mother in the small kitchen. Hawa looked up, surprised but smiling. Help me, Lena? Yes, of course. We can work together. Lena washed vegetables, arranged small baskets, and learned how to carry herself calmly and patiently. She noticed how people at the market respected her mother, how customers trusted Hawa because of her honesty and dedication. Lena began to see that real strength and success were not always about money or appearance. They were about integrity, hard work, and love for those around you. As the days passed, Lena spent more time at home helping Hawa. She realized that her mother's life had been difficult not because she was poor, but because she carried responsibilities quietly and with patience. Lena started to understand that wealth was not the measure of a person's worth. Hawa had taught her through example that love, effort, and humility were far more valuable than riches. Despite the shame Lena felt about losing the scholarship, she began to see it as a lesson. She reflected on how she had mocked her mother, laughed at their home, and compared herself to wealthier families. Now she felt the sting of regret. The embarrassment she had faced at school, the pity of her classmates, and the realization of her own carelessness all pressed on her heart. But slowly this shame transformed into motivation. She wanted to make amends, to learn, and to grow into a person who could carry responsibility, humility, and respect. Hawa watched her daughter quietly, seeing the change beginning. She did not speak immediately but continued to work, letting Lena observe and learn. The garden outside was full of vegetables that needed care, and the small home demanded attention. Lena joined in, carrying water, tending plants, and learning to appreciate the rhythm of hard work. She noticed the little sacrifices her mother had made for her all these years, waking early, working late, and providing with patience and love. Over time, Lena began to realize that life was harder than she had ever imagined. Success was not given freely, it had to be earned through effort, diligence, and humility. She began to see that the life she had criticized, the small home, the simple meals, and the modest clothing, had value. They taught lessons she had ignored: respect, responsibility, and the importance of caring for others. One afternoon, as Lena carried a basket of vegetables to the market with Hawa, she felt a new sense of humility. She noticed the smiles of the villagers who greeted her mother, the trust they placed in her, and the way they valued honesty over wealth. Lena felt a mixture of admiration and guilt. She had mocked her mother, thinking she knew better, yet here was Hawa, respected and loved for her kindness and effort. At the market, Lena began helping Hawa sell vegetables. She greeted customers politely, listened carefully, and offered assistance with a sense of responsibility she had never known before. Slowly she felt the respect of the villagers. They saw her learning, growing, and showing effort. Lena realized that true success was not about flashy clothes, popularity, or money, but about integrity, patience, and love. That evening, as Lena returned home exhausted but proud, she looked at her mother with new eyes. "Mother," she said quietly, "I am sorry for the way I mocked you. I thought I knew everything, but I was wrong. You have always been patient and wise. I want to learn from you." Hawa smiled, pulling her daughter into a warm embrace. "My child," Hawa whispered, "it is never too late to learn. The hardest lessons often teach us the most. Life may have tested you, but now you can grow stronger from it. We will face each challenge together." Over the following weeks, Lena continued to work and learn. She helped at the market, tended the small garden, and assisted with household chores. She began to understand the value of patience, diligence, and humility. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with growing maturity and respect for her mother. The scholarship loss, which once seemed like a tragedy, became a turning point in Lena's life. It taught her that carelessness and arrogance had consequences. It forced her to rely on her mother, to see the value in hard work, and to appreciate lessons she had ignored before. Slowly, the embarrassment and shame transformed into gratitude, understanding, and determination. Lena began to reflect deeply on her past behavior. She thought of how she had mocked Hawa, how she had complained about their small home, simple meals, and old clothes. She realized that her mother's life had always been full of lessons, quietly taught through patience, love, and hard work. She now understood that mocking someone for their circumstances was foolish, and that respect and gratitude were far more important than appearances or wealth. Each evening, Lena would sit quietly with her mother, listening to stories of life, learning to value what Hawa had taught through example. She began to feel a sense of pride, not in wealth or status but in effort, honesty, and the ability to grow. Lena knew that the lessons she had learned from losing the scholarship would stay with her forever. Lena's heart slowly changed. She became more patient, more respectful, and more diligent. She no longer compared herself to others or mocked what she did not have. Instead, she focused on her own growth, her responsibilities, and the love she shared with her mother. She began to see that life, though difficult, had value in every lesson, every effort, and every act of care. By the end of the month, Lena had transformed. Though she still missed the scholarship, she now understood that true success was not measured by wealth or status, but by integrity, effort, and the respect one earned through actions. She had learned humility, patience, and the importance of valuing those who loved her most. For Lena, the embarrassment and shame she once felt became a stepping stone to growth. She had relied too much on privilege she did not yet have, mocked the life of her mother, and ignored guidance from those who cared for her. But now she understood the lessons of consequence, gratitude, and respect. She had begun the journey from arrogance to humility, and it had changed her forever. After the scholarship disappointment, Lena's days changed in ways she had never expected. No longer could she waste time dreaming of wealth or mocking her mother's simple life. Every morning, she woke up earlier than before, observing Hawa as she prepared breakfast, arranged the small house, and set off to sell vegetables in the market. For the first time, Lena noticed the steady rhythm of her mother's life, the patience in her movements, the gentle care in every action. Hawa's hands moved quickly, yet delicately, chopping vegetables and arranging bundles of leafy greens for the day. She hummed softly, a tune Lena had heard countless times but never paid attention to. Today, though, Lena noticed it. There was a quiet strength in that humming, a peace that came not from wealth or status but from dedication and love. Lena watched as her mother carried the baskets outside, balancing them expertly as she walked toward the dusty village road. She realized that Hawa never complained about the heavy load or the early hours, not once. As Lena followed her mother to the market, she observed how villagers greeted Hawa with respect. "Good morning, Hawa," they called. "How are your vegetables today?" Hawa greeted each one warmly, asking after their families, offering small advice about cooking and planting. Lena noticed the genuine smiles, the trust in their eyes, and the appreciation they had for her mother. She realized that respect was earned not through wealth, flashy clothes, or fancy words, but through consistent kindness and hard work. At the market, Lena helped Hawa carry the baskets and arrange the vegetables. She noticed the care her mother took in selecting each tomato, each leafy vegetable, ensuring that customers received the best produce. Lena had never appreciated these details before. She remembered mocking the simple vegetables they had at home, but now she saw that her mother's attention to detail was a form of love, a way of showing care for the people around her. Hawa's patience extended beyond her work. When children ran past the market stalls, Lena saw her mother smile at them, offering small pieces of fruit or vegetables. When customers haggled over prices, Hawa handled them calmly, never raising her voice, never appearing frustrated. Lena felt a twinge of shame as she realized that she had once thought this simple, tireless work was unimportant. She had mocked the very qualities that made her mother strong and respected. That evening when they returned home, Lena stayed quiet, thinking about the day. Hawa set the empty baskets aside and began preparing a simple dinner. Lena watched her, noticing the way she carefully cleaned the kitchen, washed the dishes, and swept the small floor with care. Hawa's actions were not hurried or careless. They were deliberate, filled with love and attention. Lena felt a warmth in her chest she had never felt before, a mixture of admiration, guilt, and understanding. Sitting at the small wooden bench, Lena spoke softly. "Mother, I didn't see what you did every day. All this time I mocked you and I was wrong." Hawa looked up from her work, a gentle smile on her face. "My child," she said, her voice calm and steady, "it is not too late to learn. Life teaches us lessons in many ways, and sometimes we must experience regret to understand the value of love and effort." Lena felt tears prick at her eyes. She remembered all the times she had complained about their small home, old clothes, and simple meals. She remembered laughing at her mother in front of friends, thinking herself clever and superior. Now she saw the error of her ways. The embarrassment of losing the scholarship, the dependence on her mother, and the long hours spent observing her mother's work had opened her eyes. She finally understood that love, humility, and hard work mattered far more than wealth or appearances. The next day, Lena woke up early to help Hawa in the garden. The small patch behind their house required care, with tomatoes, peppers, and spinach growing in neat rows. Lena followed her mother's instructions, learning how to water the plants evenly, remove weeds carefully, and harvest vegetables without damaging them. She noticed how every action her mother took was deliberate and thoughtful, guided by years of experience. Lena felt a sense of respect she had never felt before. As they carried the vegetables to the market, Lena reflected on the sacrifices her mother had made. Hawa had worked tirelessly even when tired or sick, to provide for her daughter. She had never complained about the long days, the hard work, or the modest lifestyle. Lena realized that her mother's strength was quiet but immense. It was a kind of power that came not from money, but from patience, love, and integrity. At the market, Lena began interacting with customers herself, guided by her mother's patient instructions. She learned to greet them politely, to help them choose the best vegetables, and to handle small complaints calmly. The villagers noticed her effort and smiled at her. Lena felt a sense of pride, not in wealth or attention, but in learning from her mother, in showing care and effort. She understood that respect was earned through kindness and diligence. Days passed and Lena's admiration for her mother grew. She began helping more willingly, learning the rhythm of daily life, the effort required to maintain a home and a small business, and the joy that could be found in simple work done with love. She thought about all the times she had mocked her mother, and deep regret filled her heart. She wished she could take back her words, her laughter, and her disdain. Hawa noticed the change in her daughter. Lena no longer complained or laughed at their small home. She no longer compared herself to wealthier families or focused on appearances. Instead, she worked alongside her mother, learning humility, patience, and respect. Hawa said little, knowing that Lena's actions spoke louder than words. The lesson was being learned through experience, and it was more powerful because Lena was beginning to understand on her own. One afternoon, Lena carried a basket of fresh spinach to a regular customer. The elderly woman smiled and said, "Hawa has taught you well. You are polite and careful, just like her." Lena felt a warmth in her chest. She looked around the market and saw the respect her mother earned from everyone. She realized that mockery and pride had blinded her to what truly mattered. The life she had once considered poor was rich in lessons, respect, and love. That evening, Lena and Hawa returned home with empty baskets and tired bodies, but their hearts were full. Lena helped prepare a simple dinner, noticing the care her mother took in every small task. She set the table carefully, washed dishes thoughtfully, and swept the floor with attention. Each action reminded her of the love and patience her mother had shown throughout her life. Sitting quietly after dinner, Lena spoke again. "Mother, I understand now. I see all you have done for me, all the sacrifices and the love. I'm sorry for mocking you. I will do my best to help and to learn from you." The morning sun rose over the small village, casting golden light on the dusty roads and small homes. Lena woke up earlier than usual, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. She had spent the previous days reflecting on the lessons she had learned about humility, hard work, and love. Today she felt a determination to make things right, not only with her mother Hawa but also with herself. She got out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb her mother, and went to the small mirror hanging on the wall. Looking at her reflection, she saw a girl who had changed. She no longer carried the pride and arrogance that had once filled her heart. Instead, there was a sense of responsibility and respect, and a quiet determination to live differently. Hawa was already awake, tending to the small fire in their kitchen. She stirred a pot of porridge and arranged vegetables for the market. Lena approached her, her footsteps soft on the worn wooden floor. "Mother," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity, "I want to apologize. I was wrong to mock you. I did not understand your work, your sacrifices, or your love. I am sorry." Hawa turned and smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. She placed a gentle hand on Lena's shoulder. "My child," she said, "it is never too late to apologize or to change. You have learned the lessons and that is what matters. Let us face today together, and I will help you continue to learn." Lena nodded and felt a small weight lift from her heart. For the first time, she truly understood that love and patience were more important than money or appearances. She was ready to prove her sincerity through action, not just words. Together, she and Hawa prepared baskets of vegetables, arranging them carefully for the market. Lena noticed every detail her mother attended to: the neat bundles, the careful selection of tomatoes, the washing of leaves until they shone. She realized that her mother's life, which she had once mocked, was full of dedication and skill. As they walked to the market, Lena carried a small basket of greens, imitating the careful way her mother handled the vegetables. She greeted neighbors politely, smiling and nodding, remembering how her mother always treated people with respect. Villagers noticed the difference immediately. Those who had seen Lena's pride and arrogance before now observed a young girl who moved with humility and care. Some whispered to each other, "Look at Lena. She has changed." She has learned from her mother's example. At the market, Hawa set up her stall as usual, displaying vegetables neatly on the wooden table. Lena joined in, assisting with every task from arranging the produce to weighing vegetables for customers. She listened to her mother's advice carefully, following each instruction with care. When a customer asked a question, Lena answered politely, offering the information she had learned from watching her mother over the years. She began to feel a sense of pride, not the pride of superiority she had once known, but a quiet, satisfying pride in being helpful, respectful, and responsible. Throughout the day, Lena interacted with villagers and customers, observing the respect her mother earned. Hawa's calmness and honesty had always impressed people, and now Lena saw how her own behavior could also inspire respect when guided by love and diligence. She noticed that the smiles of the customers were warmer, their voices kinder when she approached them with humility. It was a lesson she understood fully. Respect must be earned through consistent effort and kindness, not demanded or assumed. A young boy approached the stall looking uncertain. "Do you have any spinach today?" he asked softly. Lena knelt down and selected the freshest leaves, handing them to him with a gentle smile. "Here you go," she said. "These are the best from our garden." The boy grinned and ran back to his mother, carrying the vegetables carefully. Lena felt a glow of satisfaction, realizing that small acts of care could make a difference in someone's day. By midday, Lena had sold several baskets with Hawa, learning the rhythm of the market, the patience required to answer questions, and the importance of honesty. She realized that every small action mattered. The care with which she handled the vegetables, the politeness she showed to customers, and the effort she put into her work reflected the lessons her mother had taught her all her life. She understood now why Hawa had worked tirelessly, never complaining and always prioritizing integrity and love. As they paused for a brief rest, Lena looked around the market and noticed her friends. Some of them looked surprised, others curious. "Lena," one whispered, "you are different. You treat people with respect now. You are helping your mother. We never thought we would see this." Lena smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I have learned," she said quietly. "I finally understand what really matters." The afternoon passed and the baskets emptied, replaced by the promise of another day's work. Lena moved with confidence and care, assisting her mother wherever needed. Each step she took, each conversation she had, was guided by the lessons she had learned from Hawa's life. She understood that true wealth was not in money or possessions, but in love, patience, integrity, and respect. When it was time to pack up and return home, Lena helped carry the remaining baskets, careful not to spill anything. Hawa watched her, pride shining in her eyes. "You have grown, Lena," she said softly. "You have learned humility, respect, and gratitude. These lessons will guide you for the rest of your life." Lena nodded, feeling tears of joy and relief in her eyes. She realized that the embarrassment, shame, and regret she had felt earlier had led her to this understanding. Back at home, they arranged the vegetables for the next day, cleaned the small kitchen, and prepared a simple dinner. Lena set the table carefully, noticing every detail her mother had always attended to. She realized that small acts of care were powerful expressions of love and respect. Hawa served the meal, smiling at her daughter. "Today you worked hard and learned. I am proud of you," she said. Lena bowed her head slightly, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, Mother, for teaching me. I will never forget your lessons." Days turned into weeks, and Lena continued to help her mother at the market. Each day brought new challenges, but Lena faced them with patience, diligence, and respect. She learned to carry herself with humility, to treat everyone she met kindly, and to appreciate the hard work behind every small success. The villagers noticed the change in Lena and praised her efforts. Mothers whispered to their children, "See how Lena has learned from her mother. She is kind and helpful now." Even those who had once whispered about her pride and arrogance now smiled, admiring the transformation. Lena also began to notice how her mother's quiet sacrifices shaped their lives. Hawa had worked tirelessly every day, providing food, care, and guidance. She had never complained, never sought recognition, and had always prioritized Lena's well-being above her own comfort. Lena felt deep regret for all the time she had mocked her mother, laughed at their simple home, and envied others. She finally understood that the lessons of love, hard work, and humility were worth far more than money or possessions. One afternoon, as Lena helped carry baskets to a customer, she paused and looked around the market. She saw the smiles of the villagers, the respect in their eyes, and the way her mother's reputation reflected the value of honesty and effort. Lena felt a sense of pride that was quiet and steady. She realized that she wanted to live her life with the same integrity, care, and respect that her mother had shown. At home, Lena began assisting with every chore. She cleaned the house carefully, prepared small meals, and tended the garden with diligence. Each task reminded her of the lessons she had learned about patience, responsibility, and gratitude. She felt a growing bond with her mother, strengthened by shared effort and understanding. She no longer saw their home as poor, or their life as lacking. She saw the value, love, and hard work embedded in every small moment. Over time, Lena began sharing these lessons with friends and neighbors. She treated everyone with respect, regardless of their wealth or status. She spoke kindly, helped when she could, and never mocked anyone for being poor. The villagers noticed and admired her transformation. Lena had become a young girl respected not for appearances, but for her integrity, humility, and care. Hawa watched her daughter with pride each day. Lena had changed completely. She had learned to value love, patience, and effort over wealth and status. The lessons she had once ignored, the mistakes she had made, and the embarrassment she had felt had all contributed to her growth. Hawa knew that Lena's understanding would guide her for the rest of her life. One evening, as the sun set over the village, Lena and Hawa sat quietly, enjoying a simple meal. Lena looked at her mother and smiled. "Mother, I understand now. I understand your sacrifices, your patience, and your love. I will never mock anyone again, and I will always respect you and the lessons you have taught me." Hawa reached over and held her daughter's hand. "My child, that is all I ever wanted, to see you learn, grow, and become a kind and responsible person. You have made me proud." The next morning, Lena woke with the same determination. She carried baskets to the market, greeted customers politely, and assisted her mother with patience and care. Each small act reflected her growth. She had learned the value of hard work, humility, and love. She understood that life's true riches were measured not in money or possessions, but in integrity, care, and respect for others. Weeks turned into months, and Lena continued to live by these lessons. She had changed completely. The pride and mockery that had once filled her heart were gone. She had learned the importance of gratitude, patience, and responsibility. Villagers admired her, neighbors respected her, and friends saw her as a role model. Lena had become a young girl who truly understood the value of life and love. Her transformation was a lesson to the entire village. People saw that even a child who had once mocked and complained could learn humility, respect, and gratitude. Lena's journey inspired others to value kindness, hard work, and love over wealth and appearances. She had become proof that change is possible when lessons are learned and applied with sincerity. From that day on, Lena lived differently. She treated everyone with respect, helped those in need, and worked diligently alongside her mother. She never mocked anyone for being poor and learned to appreciate every small blessing in life. She had grown into a young girl who understood that love, patience, and humility were the greatest treasures one could have. Hawa watched Lena every day, proud of the lessons she had absorbed and the person she had become. Together they worked, laughed, and shared the small joys of life, knowing that true happiness came not from wealth or possessions, but from love, care, and respect. Lena's heart had changed and the village had noticed. Her story became a reminder that humility, gratitude, and kindness are far more valuable than riches. And so, Lena's life took a new path, guided by the lessons of her mother. She had learned the hard way, but the transformation was complete. She had apologized, worked, and lived with gratitude. She had learned to respect her mother and everyone around her, and she had discovered the true meaning of love, patience, and humility.